Welcome back to These Things Are Written on this Tuesday. Glad you're joining us as we again look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to be starting with verse 23 in just a moment. Remember the previous few days that we've looked at, it's kind of revolving around this idea of the food sacrificed to idols. Paul kind of looks at it from different directions, and he continues with that in this section as well. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any questions on the ground of conscience. For the Lord is the earth's and the fullness thereof. If one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any questions on the ground of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered as a sacrifice, then do not eat it. For the sake of the one who informed you, and for the sake of conscience. I do not mean your conscience, but his. For why should my liberty be determined by someone else's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God. Just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I imitate Christ. I love that first verse 23. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Great things for us to remember as we look at this section. In many ways, it doesn't have much application for us today because we don't struggle with food sacrificed to altars around here. Notice, though, how he says that you can eat the food sacrificed to altars to idols unless they say that it is food sacrificed to idols. Then you shouldn't, not for your good, but for their good, to show them you don't agree with their idol worship and that you are set apart to open the door to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Paul calls them to take a stand for the sake of the gospel. And then there's that section beginning with verse 31. So whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. He says something very similar to this 2 places in the book of Colossians, as we just studied on Sunday morning. But whatever you do, whether you're eating or you're drinking, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. We live our lives to give him glory and honor and praise. That is what our lives are about. And then he says, give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God. In other words, don't let your actions be offensive to others. Now, this is different than submitting to the laws because we have to. This is submitting to things not to offend them so that you might be able to preach to them the gospel of Jesus Christ. He does nothing, he says, seeking his own advantage, but that of others, that they might be saved. You see, for the Apostle Paul, it is always about the sake of the gospel. And he shows this here as well. So if I'm sitting with a Baptist friend, for example, who doesn't believe in drinking alcohol, then for the sake of the gospel and for their conscience, I will not order a beer or a glass of wine or anything else. If it's someone who is struggling in another way, or someone who is perhaps someone who is a Mormon, they can't drink coffee or caffeine. They're not supposed to. If I was having a conversation with them, I would not offer to buy them a cup of coffee, and I would not drink coffee as well, as hard as that and difficult as that would be. The point is, I'm doing that so that I might be able to convince them and show them my love for them, and more importantly, Jesus' love for them. Paul ends this section, and it shows it as the beginning of the next chapter. Remember, chapters are arbitrary in the Bible. Often they were put later on in there. So this actually fits better with this section. As he wraps everything up, and how he is not seeking his own advantage, but that of others, that they may be saved. He says, be imitators of me as I am of Christ. And I'm going to end with that, on that note, for you. May we always be imitators of Paul, imitators of God, those that God has placed before us, just as they imitate Christ. God bless.